So please go ahead and start recording. I will start off by giving us a very quick overview of who our guest is today. She is somebody who is very relatable, but has a very impressive background. And I'm gonna read a little bit of her bio so that you're all aware of who we have with us this afternoon. And we'd like to thank Ozak again for making the time to connect from her busy schedule to share her experience academically and also professionally, and why specifically she decided to become an electrical engineer. So it's going to be a very exciting 60 minutes that we will spend with her and with all of you who are connected. So Ozak was born and raised in Nigeria, whereas all of us can appreciate, she often didn't have electricity being provided through the national grid. So NEPA is the name of the former public utility, which is now PHCN, but we all know the expression, NEPA has taken light, and when the power is restored, everybody cheers up NEPA. So she had that experience, which I think a lot of us on the line have also faced. She moved to the United Kingdom in 2008 when she was 17, and graduated with a first-class honors degree from Loughborough University in engineering. And then she started working as a graduate engineer for Kundal while she was finishing her PhD, also at the same university. And her PhD was focused on electronic and electrical engineering. Ozak contributed to the technical design and supervised construction of over 16 primary and secondary schools across the United Kingdom within her first 2 years at the company. She was also a part of the design team for the Energy Systems Catapult office in Birmingham. In 2017, she was promoted to electrical engineer. In this role, she was responsible for leading, managing, and coordinating the appraisal of existing electrical infrastructure and the design of new electrical building services, as well as acting as a mentor for students. Ozak was named one of the Women's Engineering Society's top 50 women in engineering under 35 in June 2017. She was also the 2017 Institution of Engineering and Technology Young Woman Engineer of the Year. In September 2017, she won the Institution of Engineering and Technology Mike Sargent Career Achievement Award for young professionals in recognition of her contributions to engineering and technology. Ozak dedicates time to initiatives that promote diversity, inclusion, equality, and she seeks to empower women and minority ethnic groups working and studying in STEM-related disciplines. These include serving at the Association for Black and Minority Ethnic Engineers in the UK, and of course also as a mentor at the Visiola Foundation, in addition to other nonprofits. So Ozak, a very warm afternoon, good afternoon, warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining us. How is the situation out there in London?
Thank you very much for having me. It's pretty quiet. Things are returning slowly back to normal as we're coming out of lockdown, but majority of us are still in lockdown and working from home where we can. Thank you very much for the introduction. It's almost, I think it's almost most of my slides, which I'm going to share now, if that's okay. But I added in some extra things, so good that I did that, because then I could take questions and tell you more rather than just, only about my career. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yes, we can.
If I can just quickly, while you're presenting for the audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the chat box, and we will make sure that we answer your questions. So over to you, Ozak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So thank you all for having me today. I'll just quickly go through a career talk. So I'll talk about myself, how I got to where I am, and I also prepared some slides about general advice, where to find resources if you're thinking of studying engineering, specifically around electricity, because that's what motivated me to become an electrical and electronics engineer. And I have created time at the end for questions, so there will be time. But as the questions come to you, I think it's very important to type the questions in the chat, and then we will take it through at the end. The reason I say that is COVID-19 has brought many various issues, but one thing I know it has a benefit is accessibility. So webinars, you don't have to travel to a particular location to attend them. You have people on your computer screen and there, and you could actually ask them questions. So please feel free. Don't be shy. Just type in your questions and I'll do my best to answer it at the end. So about my background. I like to start off by saying I have hobbies. I do have interests. You may come across as she's a workaholic, especially when you read the bio, but I do enjoy other things too as well. And I just like pointing that out before I start. So Afrobeats, you know, Whiskey, Davido, I'm in there, Burna Boy, concerts, whenever they have concerts here in the UK, I'm there. I like to bake. I like football as well. I like athletics. I did athletics when I was in school in Nigeria. I like volunteering. I genuinely enjoy it. When you understand something and you're able to share that with many people, I like that ripple effect, because the next person goes on to share it with more people. It's one of the quickest ways to advance society, I think. But then encouraging people into science, technology, engineering, and maths specifically. Those are very cognitive, high level cognitive skills in that profession. My faith, I'm Christian, and so yeah, I go to church. But yeah, I always like starting off with that. I love to travel. Didn't get to travel a lot when I was growing up because my parents, middle class, they were saving towards our education. Like most Nigerians, we value education a lot because we realize the opportunities and the benefits it can bring for us. So we didn't travel a lot growing up. I traveled within Nigeria, Lagos, Port Harcourt. I lived in Calabar. And I also traveled to like other African countries like Ghana, Benin. So just on the West Africa. It was when I came to study here in the UK, because of how close it is to Europe, I started traveling. So I save up quite a lot of my money to travel because I like to see new places. Like it broadens the mind, you broadens your view about the world basically. But these days it's very difficult to travel. But I just thought I'd mention that roller coasters as well. We're having a good time in that picture, even though we look frightened, but we are having a great time. So about me, I think most of it has been said. I was born in Kaduna, so I feel like I'm very Nigerian because I'm the length and breadth, north, south, southeast, west. So I was born in Kaduna in April '91. I'm 29 years old now. I went to my family moved back to Calabar. I'm from Cross River State. My dad's from Cross River State, and my mom is Yoruba. She's from Kogi State. And we moved to Cross River, to Calabar, in just after I was born, and I attended my primary school and my secondary school there. So I went to a special needs school called Hillcrest Junior Special Needs School, and so yeah, I think that particular education really enabled me to work with people who are different to me. So many of the kids had varying ranges of abilities and disabilities as well. So whether it was learning difficulties like dyslexia, or whether it was more or autism or other types of disabilities, basically. So I did primary school and I went straight to high school. I started secondary school in 2001. And I was there for 6 years, did my junior and secondary school at Access High School, still in Calabar as well. And then I went on to, so after you do WAEC and my JAM exams, and my parents made sure I did every exam because at that time, they didn't know that I was going to go to the UK. It wasn't a possibility. And my dad was very focused on us going to schools within Africa because they were closer to home, and also in terms of the costs as well. So the reason why we're not going to go to university in Nigeria was because of strikes. They have frequent strikes, as you guys know, in the academic calendar. So your course could actually overrun quite quickly. So I was going to go to university in Ghana to study engineering, and I will talk to you in my next slide about why I was going to go to why I was going to study engineering. But my results came out, but I couldn't go to Ghana until the next year because I was 16 at the time. And so could you please mute your microphones, if that helps? And my parents didn't want me sitting at home for 1 year not doing anything, so they sent me to an A-level school, Oxbridge in Lagos, in Ikeja, and that's my picture of myself there in Oxbridge. So that's my family: my dad, my mom, my brother's first, I'm second, Minnie is third, and Oyin is our last. And so we're quite a family of scientists and engineers. And my mom is the odd one out. So my dad is a professor in agricultural science, soil science. And my mom, she was a civil servant and administrator. She studied English at university. So she's a like literary person. Like if we have any reports that we want to write. So she's become scientific by association. My brother is a public health public health expert. He researches diseases affecting developing countries. So malaria and AIDS are his two main areas. And then there's me, electrical engineering, and Minnie, she did accounting and finance, so she's really into her mathematics. And Oyin is the chemical engineer who's converted to a software engineer at the moment. So very, very serious STEM-ish family. Well, yeah, when I was 16, which is when I made my decision to apply to university, obviously, these were the things I was interested in, and these were the things that mattered to me. I loved mathematics and economics, and I still do. I think it's very, very important, even though you're a scientist and you love science, and it's good to have an understanding of broader things as well. And economics is one because it is central to everything we do in society. And so I always enjoyed it. In fact, I got A1 in my YI for maths and economics. But the sciences, I wouldn't lie to you, I'll be honest with you, they didn't come naturally to me. I struggled. So I had to really work hard at physics, and I had to work hard when I made the decision that I was going to study electronic and electrical engineering. And I found that for every engineering, physics is very critical to that. So I had to, when I say work hard, practice, get extra tutoring, get help, and improve on it, and actually prioritize it in my studying. I struggled with chemistry till this day. In fact, I was so bad in chemistry that when I went to my A-level schools and I sat the entrance exams, they called my parents in and said, Ozak can choose anything else on this list. She should just choose chemistry. In the interest of everybody, let her do something else. And I was like, thank you, ma'am, because I didn't want to do it either. So I chose geography. So I ended up doing maths, physics, geography for my A-levels. I was passionate about the environment, obviously coming from Calabar and Cross River, where tourism is a major attraction. So I put up pictures. This is a mini promotion. If you haven't been to Cross River State, please visit. And we do have carnivals in Christmas time. We do have green spaces which you could explore. So this is Obudukatu Ranch, and this is Abokim Waterfalls, which I put pictures up there. But we were also an oil producing state at the time, and we're very close to Port Harcourt. So we know of the impact that oil exploration has cost in those areas. And I remember when I was 16, we did quite a lot of essays about conservation in our English class, but there were essay competitions. When I entered for Fanta in 2004, in 2006, it was about rainforest conservation in Cross River State. It is something very important to be aware of the environmental impacts of engineering. I acknowledge that energy and oil are crucial to providing energy for us. But what I'm also passionate about is doing it in a sustainable way where it doesn't damage the environment and damage or cause people's lives or the loss of animals as well, or complete extinction of animals in the process of it. So yeah, those are the things that interested me. I was really good in geography and agricultural science. I still love agricultural science. I think it's very crucial and is one of the key areas that would really lift Africa out of a lot of its current problems. So those are the types of stuff that interested me, and I was really strong-willed and determined. So although I didn't understand physics, I was willing to do the work and put in the effort to understand physics. So why did I choose electrical engineering? And this is an extract from my UCAS application. So this is the application you do to go study in the UK. So I remember writing that I wish to study electronic and electrical engineering because I like challenges and I aspire to design better electricity generating systems in my country, Nigeria. So looking at that, you are familiar with for me, these are the steps I personally went through growing up in Nigeria. So when we were really young, we used to use candle to do our homework when it was late at night because we didn't have a generator. But as my parents got better jobs and as their lives improved, so did our access to electricity improve. I remember the first time, so from candles, we went to kerosene lanterns. We couldn't use them to sleep, obviously, because that's a fire hazard. So they'll just wait till you were asleep. We had to go to bed really early just so that we don't have to leave it on overnight. And then we graduated to rechargeable lamps. So my mom would take it to the office in the morning with her, and my dad would take some as well. And because they were working for, my dad works for the university, so federal, and my mom works for the state. And she's retired now, but she used to work as a civil servant. So they would have sometimes the generator switched on at the office and they would charge it and bring it home for us to use. And then eventually we got our own generator, which was a big deal back then. And even when we had it, you only put it on when you started hitting your head on things. Like if you didn't hit your toe, the generator should not be on because diesel is very expensive, as we know. And I just always felt like that wasn't the normal way things should be. I just always felt like it was probably different in other places. And I genuinely thought it was because we didn't have enough electrical engineers in Nigeria. But as I'm older now, I do realize that it's not the case. We do have engineers. We just need to come up with more innovative ideas and sustainable ways about how we generate electricity. But there's also the management side of things in terms of funding, which I wouldn't get into in this call. But yeah, so I wrote there, like, when I complete my course, I intend to work in an electricity supply company and probably own one. How ambitious. But I don't own one now. I don't work in an electricity supply company, but I haven't ruled it out in the future. At the moment, I'm just going with the flow and I am enjoying the flow, which I'll talk about in my coming slide. So what I actually do now. But that was my motivation for studying electrical engineering. So my professional experience, I came to the UK in 2008 and I was successful in getting a place at Loughborough University to study electronic and electrical engineering. But something I didn't mention was I didn't make the requested grades that they required. I think the grades were AAB and I only made 3 Cs. But because, and they were willing to concede that year, but I would have to downgrade from the MN program, which is your master's sandwich program, to the bachelor's program. So I remember calling them crying on the phone from Nigeria. I have nowhere else to go. And because I did have admission to Kumasi in Ghana. But I mean, if there's the opportunity to go to Ghana and there's the opportunity to go to the UK, I visited Ghana before. I never stepped up into the UK before. You would want to go to the UK. So yeah, when I called them, they said, yes, they're willing to offer me a place, but I'd have to downgrade. But there are opportunities during the year. If I make a good grade, a 2-1 in my first year, I'll be able to switch back to that program. But I ended up staying on the bachelor's program anyway, and I graduated. So I arrived in the UK in September 2008. I was 17 at the time. So I graduated when I was 20 in July 2011 from electronic and electrical engineering. Really enjoyed the course. And one of my tutors encouraged me to apply for a PhD. And I was like, no, I'm not applying for any PhD. That's how they said, do A-levels in 1 year. Because A-levels traditionally is 2 years. You know, it's not 1 year, it's a 2-year program. But I did it 1 year because the plan was to just not be idle for a year at home. That's why I went in the first place. So I felt like skipping and trying to do it in 1 year contributed to me not making my predicted grades. But yeah, my teacher was like, if you do well in your first degree, you don't need a master's to do a PhD. I always thought you needed an MSc. If you get a high score on your degree. If you get a good degree, like a first class, you can go straight to a PhD. And so yeah, I applied for a PhD at the same university, Loughborough, and I got one, and it was with a scholarship as well. And so I didn't have to pay tuition. It was a complete studentship of about £54,000. I was really grateful for that opportunity, and I started my PhD, and I'll talk about what I did for my PhD. Towards the end of my funding, because it's funded, it was for 3 years, and at the end of the 3 years, you would have to either pay for any additional cost, or yeah, you would have to be writing up by then. So I was lucky enough to be writing up, and I started applying for jobs. Ideally, I would have liked to go into the energy sector because my PhD was around renewable energy. It was my passion, you know, that drove me to study electronic and electrical engineering in the first place. But in the UK, you needed, and you still need, a work visa to get jobs as an international student, and they weren't willing to sponsor. They're not very easy to come by. So sometimes you have to look at the shortage list. The UK has a shortage list where they publish every single role or career where they lack enough people at the moment. If that particular industry you're interested in is not on that list, you wouldn't be able to get visa sponsorship. Energy sectors were on there, but at the time they were just not sponsoring visas. So I started looking broader, and I found out that the construction industry, not many UK or EU nationals were applying to those sectors. And so it was a skills shortage, and it still has a skills shortage at the moment. And so I started applying there because that's the great thing about engineering. It's very fluid. So just because I'm no longer generating electricity, people are still going to be consuming electricity in buildings. How do you design for that? You don't lose the idea or the knowledge you've gathered about generation. Instead, you're just applying it in a different setting within the entire grid system. That's the way I viewed it. And I got a job there, worked as a graduate engineer, and then got promoted to electrical engineer. So I was in Condo for about 5 years or 4 years, 4.5 years. And I was more interested in research side again. And so I started looking for jobs, and I found a job at BRE, which is the Building Research Establishment. It's the UK's Building Science Centre. So when standards or regulations or policies are brought into place, there's a lot of research that happens in the background before those standards become the norm for industry. So BRE undertakes most of those research and knowledge generation for industry on how industry could improve better, but specifically for the construction and infrastructure industry. I became a chartered engineer, which is a professionally registered engineer, in May 2019, last year. So my PhD, like I said, was around wind energy. So how can we detect damage on wind turbine blades before damage actually happens? So I've just put up a picture here showing you the problem. There's a huge amount of capital invested in all renewable energy technology. So wind turbines are in millions, hundreds of thousands and to billions. For a complete farm, you're talking about even bigger numbers. So how do you protect the infrastructure? How do you prolong its service life? Could you please mute Chechi? And so you could there are various failures that could occur. So what I did was come up with a solution to detect damage. So we have mobile phones, and because of the use of mobile phones, smart sensors called MEMS, micro electromechanical systems accelerometers, they become really cheap because they're embedded in our smartphones and used in like the navigation systems, for example, on our phones. So yeah, I use those to try and detect damage. The great advantage about it is because of their miniature size, like you see there, that's how tiny they are in comparison to a coin. They can be embedded in the blade during its manufacture, and it wouldn't affect the aerodynamics of the blade. So this is just some pictures of my testing in the labs and some of my modeling. So I had to use software to model the blade as well. And so it's a combination of both theoretical and experimental research. And I did propose a single chip device that can be mounted on the blade during its manufacture. So it's a sensor, it detects damage. So by detection, so every structure has a natural frequency with which it oscillates at. Now, if there are any changes in its physical properties, like if there's a change in its mass, so for example, there's a lot of icing on the blade, the sensors will detect that change from normal. and register it in profiles like this. If there's a crack in the blade, that's also going to affect this natural profile of the blade, this natural frequency of the blade. So essentially that's what it's monitoring basically, and is reporting it wirelessly to a base station using a transmitter, a radio transmitter and an antenna. So people don't actually have to physically climb up to the blade every single time to inspect it. The system just stays on the blade and monitors it throughout the life cycle or throughout the whole life of the blade. So that was a brief, should I say, introduction into my research, a brief overview. And like I mentioned, as part of your research, you're expected to publish papers, attend conferences. So these were some of the awards and grants I won. So I mentioned at the beginning, it was £54,000 for 3 years for my research. But then there were other competitions that happened for doctoral candidates, which I was involved in, and I just took part. So something I really do is just grab opportunities when I see them. I may not be the best candidate, but if I see something that interests me, I will put myself forward for it, because if you're not in it, you would never know what could have been. So some of them you get no, which is fine, you move on. And sometimes you ask for feedback as well as to why that was the case, but then you move on from it. There's always a next one, and there's always a next thing that, and you can only improve by trying in the first place. So working in Condo, Elide has kindly mentioned some of the projects I was involved in. Building services is a discipline that not many people think about. When people think about buildings, they think about architects and civil engineers. But there's a whole, shall I say, subset, which is building services, which is how the building actually functions and operates. So these are pictures of some of the projects I was fortunate to be involved in while I was working at Condo. And I was really glad because I got to go travel to Nigeria, to Lagos for free, and not for free, the company paid obviously, but on project time. It was really nice because I left as a teenager and now I'm coming back and I'm able to work on projects, etc. But yeah, a lot of it involves designing in the office on software. So that's me. And you can see there's a software of a classroom where you model the various electrical services. So I am electrical building services. So that is your power, how power gets to your site, how it's distributed within your building, how it is used. There is lighting. So how much lighting illuminance do you need on a particular surface? Is different lighting required on a desk where people are going to be using computers, and it's different to like a surgical room and where somebody is going to be operating on somebody. So there are lots of standards that govern that, and you design and model using various software like AutoCAD and Revit to model your buildings. There's containment systems. So containment systems carry all the cabling. You don't want it to be fire hazards. There's fire systems design, so your fire alarms and your detection systems. Access control, so whether it's a card reader or whether it's biometrics, people need fingerprints to enter the building. What level of security does your building need? And then there's data infrastructure as well for your building. Emergency lighting. So those are the sorts of services as an electrical and building services engineer that I was designing for buildings. And obviously you get to, after the design process, there's a whole series of people you work with. So to get your design across, you would work with the architect because it needs to sit in with their vision. You'd work with the mechanical engineer because most of the mechanical systems like the air conditioning or the heating systems, they would require some power. And as an electrical engineer, you have to have an understanding of what other people do, not just your own discipline, but you do have to have a command of your discipline. But then there's a bit about going on site to inspect what the builders are doing and the installers are doing and making sure that it's according to what you've designed and specified for each project. Now I work in smart buildings. So my current role is a combination of my PhD, so looking at sensors, and my previous role designing and build electrical services for buildings. So now there's a whole lot of talk about IoTs. What are IoTs? IoTs simply are taking all the physical places and things in the world and connecting them to the internet. And so how do we go about doing that? How do we connect various things within a building, and what is the purpose of it? So there's no specific definition of a smart building, but this is my definition of what a smart building is. A smart building should be intelligent, sustainable, secure, adaptive, and occupant-centered, sorry. So in the past, we just design buildings and then people come and live in them or people come and use them. But now, could we be thinking more from the beginning about the occupants and what their needs are for that particular space? it's kind of shifting the dynamic, basically, is what a smart building is. It has both passive parts and environmentally designed, and it also has reactive parts where sensors can detect things and react, but also learn and then predict future alterations or future events. So you could start doing like things like predictive maintenance. So rather than wait for your AC to stop working, and your sensors from gathering data over a long period of time about your assets in that building, about your various infrastructure within that building, you could then start predicting when your air conditioning is going to fail, or when it's going to stop working, and maintain it or intervene before it actually fails. So IoT solutions generally, they involve 4 components. So the sensor itself or device that detects or measures. There's connectivity, so how that sensor communicates with other parts within that solution. Then there's data processing, where you analyze the data that you're collecting from the device or from your building. And then there's user interface. So how do we want people to use this data? We don't want it to just come across as a series of numbers like on an Excel spreadsheet. That's not an efficient way. So how do we want people to visualize this data? And increasingly, there's this fits into work, which involves a digital twin, which a lot of countries are currently working on. So the UK is one of them, where you would have a digital representation, like for like, with what you have in the physical. And so you could actually monitor your building remotely, everything done virtually, basically. And so those are the types of research I'm currently involved in. So I'm the technical lead for smart buildings at BRE. And if you think about buildings, there are various types, you know, and especially when you start talking about things like digital twins. There are residentials, there are schools, there are hospitals. And so I just like to put this up here to give you a broader scope as to all the various sectors and various options that there are when it comes to construction. So a lot of people really underestimate the opportunities there, but when you look at it on a screen like this, there's stadiums, there's so much different types of buildings, thinking about, and for each of those use case, for each of those sensors, the use case and the occupant experience is very different. How you want somebody to feel in an airport is completely different from what you would need in a care home or in a hospital, for example. And so the technology would be different as well. So I just put this up here of my typical day. So this is our estate. So BRE owns all of that. And most of them are test facilities. So let's say there's a new construction method and they want to try it out. They'll try it out on site. They'll build a demo of it and you run tests on it. So I'm currently working on this project and that's also our office as well, fitting it out with numerous sensors and seeing the quality of data we could pull out of those sensors. So I usually start my day with a cup of coffee. So I'm probably sat around here from the window looking out. And we have project management. So we use the agile project management style. So we have like to do, done, in progress, the Kanban as well as part of that. And so yeah, we've planned out our project, how we're going to deploy the sensors, how we're going to extract data from it into like BIM environments using various software and tools, how we're going to develop the digital twin for that particular estate. So this is a BIM model now, or represent from BIM of our estate. Could we go even in finer detail where you could go into each individual room and see the exact assets? But then there's also issues around how, there are also, should I say, risk around that. So part of the research is to investigate how to do it, but also what are the potential risks there are, and plan for policies and standards around that, plan for guidance for industry around that. And so effectively what you want to achieve is like a system that speaks to everything and everything is connected on an integrated platform within your building, your BMS, your building management system that controls your temperature, your lighting, access control, CCTV, security, metering, etc. And also pulling live data from other sources. So like the weather temperature outside would impact on your BMS. So you want to know that so that you know how to better manage and operate your building. And so there's other stuff as well. So looking at the future of buildings, there's a lot of talk about future of work, for example, for workplaces. In the UK and many developed countries, the projection is that more women will be going into work. So there are various things like how could we make the space a bit more sustainable to meet the needs of those occupants. So there's some research that talk about lactation spaces within the workplace and nurseries. Some companies already do this. So if you work for Google, Apple, or Facebook, or one of the big tech companies, they do have that like vertical farming, and they have various things could be done within the building space, but ultimately incorporating, for example, it's called biophilic design, incorporating plants into building, and then incorporating sensors around that as well. But a lot of it is also visualizing this data as you're collecting it. So there's a lot of work going on within my team around virtual reality, augmented reality. And we're currently working with beam caves on how to show the data. There's also work around security. So these are some of the challenges. Who gets to see what about your building? So quite recently in the news, a building got hacked and taken over where people could actually control various parameters within your building. So imagine in some scenarios, it may not be critical, but if you think of, like, for example, a care home that takes care of elderly people, that could easily become a terrorist attack in a way, because if somebody increases and decreases the temperature, or even in a hospital intensive care unit, where various parameters, various metrics are very critical, something like a small change in temperature could have really severe impact. So how do you keep buildings secure? Most of these devices as well, they don't, like IoT devices, they don't currently have standards. And when they do have standards, they're not adopted properly within construction. So everything I'm talking about is specifically for the construction industry. So could we look at creating a better way people can adopt standards, and could we improve on standards that they currently are? Spectrum crunch is another challenge. So if all these things are connecting to Wi-Fi or connecting to the internet, etc., could there be other ways, especially Wi-Fi, if it becomes overloaded in a building? Should we be looking at other, should I say, other technologies? So one of them is Li-Fi, so light fidelity, using light sources as a way of transmitting data and transmitting information. IoT life cycle. So many of these devices, they are new, kind of like our phone. We use them for how long, and then a new one comes along. There's no support for the existing stuff you have. We can't, that's a wasteful process. Could we make that more sustainable, where we're reusing most of these existing and legacy IoT devices and extending their life cycle a lot longer? I won't go to the entire list, but cybersecurity obviously is very important. Data privacy and security. So who sees the data, who has visibility of the data, and for what purpose, and how can we prevent that unauthorized people have access to that data? But there's still the issue of skills shortage. So if you're talking about all this technology in construction, it means that it's a shift from how we've been building buildings in the past before, with just the shell and the core. You need people with new skills and new ideas that would push this forward. So there is still a huge skills gap. So part of the work we undertake as well as part of BRE is looking for how we could create training opportunities and information for people to be able to, shall I say, take up jobs fully within the sector. These are some of the organizations I support, which was mentioned at the beginning. I do a lot of volunteering because I enjoy doing it. A lot of people like to paint it as, oh, it's just for the good of society. I do it for myself first. I'm going to be honest. I've gained so many skills from volunteering. So I used to be very shy. I wouldn't want to speak up. It's improved my confidence. You know, the more you present, the more you do something that's outside of your comfort zone, the only way you could improve. So I started volunteering a lot when I started my PhD, because as part of your PhD, you'll be going to conferences, presenting about the stuff you do, the work you do. And yeah, it was very important to me that I developed that skill and confidence. So I started going to schools, talking to children about what I did. And sometimes kids will ask you really simple questions, but because it's so simple, you haven't thought about it before. And I started almost using it as a therapy session. Okay, every time I had a new idea on my PhD, I would go to a school to do a presentation, just hoping that the kids would ask me something that would help me even think deeper about that thing. And it just grew from there. So when most of them, it's like by referral. So Visiola Foundation, obviously, I really admire what they do, and encouraging more girls into engineering. I was very fortunate. My parents, my dad encouraged us to go into these disciplines, mainly because he said there was money. And he didn't lie. There are very well paid jobs in science, technology, engineering, and maths. But also there's fulfillment that I get from my job. You know, you're contributing to society. It may not be grand like Elon Musk or like Bill Gates, but you are contributing. So for every building I've built, there's people occupying them now. For every project I've contributed to, I didn't build the entire thing on my own. I collaborated with a whole group of people. But it's still a valid contribution to society. And I don't think I could get that from anything else. So I really enjoy what I do as an engineer. And so volunteering is just one way of spreading that ripple, I would say, down to other people to experience the same thing as well. And so the Deaf Foundation, for example, is in Nigeria. They're based in Jos, and they support kids who are hard of hearing or deaf, and who are mostly overlooked in Nigeria. I could put my hand up and say that with my heart without feeling any like restricted. Disability in Nigeria, there's a lot we could do to support people. So they do support a lot of young people with coding. And that's another thing about engineering. It's accessible these days, because before, now you could just sit on your computer and actually type codes, you know, and you are contributing to society. So there's many options. I put the QE prize up there. They're part of the Royal Academy. And some of them are available. So like the Institution for Engineering and Technology, they do have bodies in Lagos, for example. They have representation across Africa. And they do have various opportunities, especially in lockdown like this. AFBE, the Association for Black and Minority Ethnic Engineers, they've been putting up really great webinars throughout lockdown, which anybody can access anywhere in the world by just logging in and registering for it. So I recommend all of them on there. And this is just a slide showing some of the pictures of the awards I've been fortunate to win in my career. I'll be awarded. And I won't go into too much detail, but the IET, the Institution for Engineering and Technology's Young Woman Engineer of the Year, was quite a big one and happened in 2017. And as part of winning that award, you're an ambassador for the institution. So you get to go to a lot of events, to speaking to kids about engineering, speaking to adults, speaking in parliament or to politicians about engineering as well. And that was really high profile and really, should I say, expanded my professional network. So these are some of the stuff I got to do throughout the year. Got invited to St. James's Palace, and I got to curate book titles on engineering. So these are fun reading books. So it's not always hardcore physics textbooks. There are literature available that are fun to read as well as part of your leisure reading, which you can incorporate. And I'm happy to share that afterwards if anybody needs some of the book titles. I also use the opportunity to curate some books that inspire me. So that's Chimamanda's We Should All Be Feminists there. I like that. It's a very short book and very straight to the point. But yeah, I got to talk to quite a lot of schools, did articles in newspapers, met a lot of young people, and it was a fantastic year and a real privilege for me. I did mention the IET because it was the awards, but prior to, so the IET doesn't just do awards, they do a lot of events for people everywhere in the world, and you could get involved. So for example, the IET Young Professionals Global Challenge, every 2 years, they release a challenge, and it's open to people who are from, I think it's 16 or 18 and above, 18 to 25, I think is the group. And if you have an idea that addresses that problem, you could enter the competition. So my friend Kemi, who's in Nigeria, and my friends who are here in the UK, we just formed a group amongst ourselves and entered in 2015. Our idea didn't win. That year, the problem was overheating of laptops for aid workers. And if you come up with an idea, you work together as a team and develop your idea. You don't actually have to build it at the beginning stages, but just working through the problems. The next year, it was about vehicle overloading, and they needed some ideas about how to detect overloading in vehicles so that people aid workers stop overloading their vehicles, which can cause accidents. So prior to the awards, I joined as a student member. Anybody could join, you know, anybody who's interested in engineering and studying towards becoming professionally registered could join. And I just occasionally went to events that interested me, attended events that interested me. So it's a great way because it's helped me build my network and build on people I know. But it's also helpful in other aspects. So like in this, go to Malawi, and I was supported with a travel award.
These look like some of the types of photos that we also have in our STEM clubs and our STEM camps. So I hope, you know, the students on the line are also smiling, because
Yeah.
it's really nice to see that this is happening and you've been supporting this in other countries as well.
Yes. And there's a documentary that was filmed about the entire journey. You could go on YouTube and you'd find it on there. It's called STEM Build Malawi, and was filmed by the Institute of Engineering and Technologies and TV. IET TV is what they're called. But yeah, so what has worked for me so far? I say I just put some points on there. Viewing life as a journey, not a race, and drawing motivation from naysayers. I had family members, aunties, who thought, engineering, why is she going to do engineering? Why can't she do something simple like the rest? Like, if you want to do it, don't let the naysayers. If anything, I use them as motivation. So anytime I wasn't feeling up to this, I was like, oh, and I knew I was going home for Christmas, I was like, to give auntie so and so the benefit of saying, hey, maybe I said it, I will not allow that happen. So it motivated me rather than put me down. I say seek and take on, give opportunities and be creative. So there are certain points in your life where you won't be able to give opportunities. You'll be able to seek them and take them. Please do that. But when you are able to give opportunities back, please do as well. Accepting that there will always be people better than me, but I will always remain determined to do whatever it takes to level the playing field. So whether it's putting in extra hours or seeking and asking for help, never, never, never not seek and ask for help. If you don't know something, the only way you could learn is by seeking and asking for help. Some people are afraid to look stupid. I don't care how stupid I look. I'm always interested in the outcome. By asking this question, no matter how stupid it may sound, will I get more knowledge about it? If the answer is yes, I'm going to answer that question. I don't care how it seems. Being honest with myself, a bit harsh sometimes, about my strengths and weaknesses. Only you knows your true self. So only you can make that assessment on what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. And then you could work towards them. Being hardworking, consistent, and organized with goals, being able to network with the right people, whether it's on social media or in person. Social media is very helpful because it's just being able to connect with people and actually use those connections that you have on social media. Being kind, sincere, empathic, positive, and celebrating the success of others. Now, who can guess how many careers, how many jobs there are in electricity alone, the topic of electricity? I'd like to see. I haven't been checking the questions section. I don't know if you have questions in. Oh, great. I have a couple. How many? We just put a random number and then I'll give it 1 minute and then we'll see. I can't really see where the...
Anybody, we'll get to the questions later. So the students on the line, any guesses? Just throw out some numbers. We just want to see how many careers? Somebody said 4.
4, okay.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Wait for one more.
Somebody said 11.
Okay.
Anybody else? We'll take one more.
Yeah.
Somebody else? Going once. Going
14.
twice.
14.
14. Okay.
Just off the top of my head, and this was me making this slide last night, there are 30 on this slide. 30 jobs or careers you could think of in electricity alone. So if you think about the national grid, there is this source where your energy comes from. There is a transmission and distribution of that electricity before it gets to whether it's industry, people's houses, people's offices, and people's homes. So this is the consumption side. So these are the jobs that I found just by quick search yesterday, which means there could be more. And the purpose of me putting this up there is to encourage you to think broader. So yes, most of our problems in Nigeria is here. I can tell you that right now. We have many issues around transmission and distribution, which you can be addressing. But something I would say is, what are other countries doing? How have other African countries gone around this? A great project I recommend you look at is a project by Rwanda. Rwanda have a methane plant. I think it's the world's first underwater methane plant. You should check it out. I know sometimes when you see projects, for me at least, when I saw projects from the US, UK, I just always thought, they have money, like, so they can afford to do those types of stuff. What kind of ideas can we have for our own country? Renewables offers an answer to that. So we may not have a grand system where every single thing is connected like it's done in other countries. Could we look at smaller systems like microgrids where we're connecting smaller communities together and then building the blocks towards a bigger one where everything is then connected together? So these are some of the jobs. You could be electrical engineer, there's nuclear in that, or there's network engineers, building services engineers, and sustainability engineer. So what's the impact of a new project on the environment? And there's environmental engineers and consultants on this other side. But there's also the trading side of energy. You need to have an understanding about how energy works, how volatile it is. And because there's the financial side, there are jobs in finance that relate to electrical and electricity at the same time, intellectual property engineers. So people are coming up with solutions, people are coming up with new ideas about how we can use various technology. Intellectual property engineers protect those ideas from other people stealing them. But to be able to do that, you need to understand how the system works, if that makes any sense. You need to have an understanding of electricity, you need to have an understanding of the technology itself. I think I'm writing on my screen. I don't know why. So ignore that green line. So yeah, some of the resources, and I've put this up there because they are available free. So if you want to know more about careers in electricity or just about improving your understanding about electricity, these are some of the resources available. And I could share this afterwards. Actually, this is being recorded, so you could refer to it later. But the Institution of Physics do really good stuff on their website. And I didn't need any login of any sort to access all of this information. I just searched online. Something I think is really valuable. In my time when I was at school, it was textbooks we were using in Nigeria. We didn't have access to internet. Now, there's a whole vast amount of information and resource at your disposal that you're only a search away from. These organizations as well, they have resources on the paths. So if you do a particular subject, if you do a particular course, what are the jobs you could get in this area and how can you get those jobs? And the IET do quite a lot of resources on their website for primary school, secondary school, and they have a few other challenges on. Yes, many of them are UK based. So the actual competitions that they would run would be in the UK, but their resources are free for you to use. STEM learning, they have a lot of resources on various practical projects you can undertake on your own. And there are steps that they provide for you to be able to do that with whatever resources you have. So I would say take advantage of them. And this is the Big Bang, Tomorrow's Engineer. You can check out their website. They create this chart of 100 jobs that there are. Some of them on here, I haven't even thought of disaster relief specialist. So this is broader than electricity now. This is just jobs in science, technology, engineering, and maths. So if you're not sure about what to do, there's so much information out there that you can actually access to help you make that decision. Something I really encourage is the use of YouTube. A lot of us use YouTube and Instagram for makeup tutorials. We can occasionally use it too to help us with complex stuff we don't understand, and even simple stuff. They're really fun videos. I love videos on electricity that Fuse School makes. And so I put up a logo of some of the channels to subscribe to on YouTube. So the B1 gives really good information about construction and what's happening in the world. Real Engineering breaks down things even down to how a roller coaster works. So they film various bits from Disneyland and talk about the engineering involved in roller coasters, and I really love them. So yeah, I just put them up for you to have. If you're struggling with a particular topic, something I used to do is when they've taught me at university in my class and I don't understand, I'd go home and use YouTube and see what's available on there. If I still don't understand, then I'll go meet the professor and ask questions. But those things are free, you know, once you have internet access. There's also engaging resources, newspapers. I recommend Ingenia. It's by the Royal Academy, I think, or it's affiliated with the Royal Academy of Engineering. And they do monthly issues of magazines on engineering. And this is targeted at teenagers and young children. So it's not too complex, but you get to know what's happening in engineering and stay relevant and stay sharp. Other websites like Engineer Girls, IoT for All, if you're interested in IoTs, like I mentioned in my presentation, there's a lot of information on that there. My Skills, My Life, is by the Women in Science. I can't remember their full name. WISE is their abbreviation. But basically it matches, so they've done like a profile of current engineers who are women, and they've said what their hobbies are, what their interests are, what drives them. You could actually do some tests to match your personalities to the type of engineering that you could be doing. So it's a fun resource to try out. And this engineering.com have some fun games as well that you could play around engineering. But then there's also movies to inspire you, you know. even myself as an adult, I'm practicing as an engineer now. Occasionally, you just need that to inspire you and to give you courage. And so I put some movies I've watched in the past that really encouraged me. So The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind is a really good one about a Malawian inventor, Kwamba, who invented a wind turbine for his local village and then helped them during the drought season. I don't want to ruin the story plot for you, but and then there's Hidden Figures as well, you know. So those are the two that came to my mind, but there's more. So actionable advice: revise and practice is still the best way to get better at anything. Have a local and global perspective when you're considering careers in engineering. I said local because that is still important. For me, everything I do now, I still always ask myself, so when I move back to Nigeria, how would this fit in? Where can I apply this? I still think about it. Liaise with and utilize STEM ambassadors and mentors. There's many mentors and they're made known on Twitter, on LinkedIn. Connect with them. Feel free to ask them questions. I've gotten loads of questions from people on LinkedIn in the past, which I'm happy to answer. Utilize online resources, videos, and courses for coding, etc. Relate technical topics to careers where possible. So if you learn something in physics, for example, how can I apply this? What types of jobs does somebody who, so if, for example, I learned about thermodynamics, is which I put up there now. Something I used to do was what type of jobs do you use thermodynamics from? Because sometimes it helps you better understand the thing if you can relate it to a job. And now Google is there to help you just answer that question straight away. And leisure reading are also useful. So a lot of people see engineering as you have to sit down and do calculations, but sometimes just reading about what's happening in the world and around technology can actually be incorporated into leisure reading, where it doesn't seem like you have to bring out your calculator and be in a zone to be able to understand. Attend STEM camps, which you're already doing with Visiola Foundation, well done. And fairs and competitions, enter for competitions online when you see them. So the worst that will happen is you don't win, but the process you've gone through in that helps, it builds you as an engineer. Practical and hands-on sessions help to reinforce learning. Now, I know it's not always very simple. It's not always very straightforward to achieve because of resources. But these days, you could use cardboard boxes. You could use various things to be able to mimic, should I say, hands-on demonstrations of things. So get creative, you know, just try. And in terms of financials, like if you want to study, there are scholarships available. I know of many Nigerians who apply for this. So if you want to study, you just have to search for these things. And there's a lot of people on Twitter I follow who their main purpose on Twitter is sharing scholarship opportunities. Like there's a series and series of pages on it. But something I like to end on is don't forget the softer skills. So people think of engineers as just calculated, geeky nerds, but there are soft skills. You need to be able to have people skills because ultimately you won't be working on your own in engineering. It's a collaborative profession. You need skills to be able to work with other people skills to be able to share and get your point across, share your ideas with other people. Other things that have worked for me is networking, communicating clearly, and improving on it. So I was very shy. I used to be worried about my accent, that maybe people will not understand what I'm saying. And I had to grow confidence in myself. And I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't put myself out for volunteering and improving on that because I knew it was a weakness. Time management, planning and organizing. My attitude, I have a very positive attitude and it's helped me so far. So my situation may not be exactly as I wanted it to be, but what is the positive I can take out of this current situation? So if I had given up when I didn't get a visa to work in energy sector, that would have been the end now. But then looking at what are the broader applications, where else can I find positivity in this course that I have studied? And I found roles in construction. So far it's worked for me. It's my coping mechanism where even when something is negative, what is the positive in this negative condition I'm in? Professionalism. And so that's just being on time, even though I'm overrunning right now, sorry, I'll still take questions, I promise. But something I had to learn is discretion when I started working. So there are non-disclosure agreements. You don't have to share everything about projects you're working on. You have to be sensitive to things like that. Delegation, again, when I got promoted, I found out that I was quite a hoarder of work where I just used to believe that nobody else would do it like I would do it. And just learning to let go, learning to delegate and be a leader where it's okay to let other people too work on this thing to grow and develop. And I could not hover around them, but support them in a more should I say, helpful manner. So I really had to learn that, and I'm still learning to delegate properly. And negotiating, again, I'm still not there yet. And I'm not very good at negotiating, but as you grow in your career in engineering, most times you become a project manager where you will now be looking at the financials, the implications of certain methods or certain solutions over the other, and negotiating with clients, and even negotiating your ideas. The architect thinks, no, I want full height windows, but you know for a fact that from the electrical side of things, that's going to impact your idea. So how do we reach a consensus on this particular thing? So that would come with time, but it's one of the skills I like to mention. But then there's also emotional and social intelligence, being able to read a room, being able to read people's perceptions, how they are receiving something you're saying, but also being able to listen to what other people have to say. That's emotional and social intelligence is much broader than that, and there's so much resource about it online if you Google it. But I just like to point it out because sometimes it gets forgotten in conversations around engineering. So now this is an ad for various free things I have seen online just between yesterday in making this slide. And the first one is the Big Engineering Work Experience Week, which starts on the 27th. It's free and anybody can apply, but the deadline is today. So I know that may be tight, but I don't know what the form looks like. I think it's really simple. If you're interested in that, you could apply. I think it closes at just before midnight today. So feel free to send in applications for that. But then one of my friends, Ade, is running a session on 3D printing for kids ages 14 plus, and it's going to be online, introducing people to what 3D printing is about. And so I thought I'll put it here as an ad while I take your questions, if there are any. So thank you for listening. I know I've spoken for quite a long time, but hopefully you have interesting questions on anything, life, my career, anything. I'm happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Ozak. Wow, even I was busy writing, I've got like 2 pages of notes that I was taking. This has been incredibly inspirational and useful. We already have a couple of questions, and I'm going to ask the girls and anybody else who's online, if there are additional questions, you can feel free to either type them into the chat box or raise your hand, let us know, and we'll allow you to ask the questions directly. Let me start off by reading 2 questions that were submitted by Uchechi, and she is one of our star students. I believe this is Uchechi who won the UNESCO energy essay. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Fantastic. So I'll actually let you, actually, why don't you go ahead? So you tell her about that essay competition, and then also ask the 2 questions. I'll let you speak for yourself. I won't speak for you.
Okay, should I start with the questions first?
No, start by telling her who you are and tell her this amazing award that you've received recently.
Okay, my name is Uchechi Mary Victoria, a student from Amide Secondary School, and I was privileged to be part of an essay writing with different people from around the world, and then it was taken to professors and shown to other people from UNESCO too. So my question is,
congratulations.
What is the energy future of Nigeria, and what do you think that will enhance electricity in Nigeria? That's my first question. Then my second question is, how are you trying to extend some of your activities to touch the lives of people in Africa and Nigeria in particular?
Okay, I'm just making a note of my. So in terms of energy future, I think that renewable energy technology would play a key part in that. Sorry, you can't see me. My camera is disabled, but you can see my picture. So I think renewable energy is definitely going to play a huge part. I mean, there are several drivers for that. There's talks about climate change, which is increasing in this part of the world. And there's just this general move towards more like sustainable methods of energy, sustainable sources of energy. I still see oil and gas playing a role in Nigeria's energy future, at least for the next 10 years. And that's purely because, like every other country, even here in the UK, it's a phasing process. It's not gone all at once. The UK just unplugged coal-fired gas stations not too long ago. So I think it takes time, and it would be a mix of both renewables. So by renewables, I mean solar. A lot of solar in Nigeria would be of good use, but also other sources of energy. So whether it's thermal, biomass is one that I don't think has been explored to its full capacity in Nigeria. So where we're generating energy from waste, for example. If you think, there are some plants in Lagos that are currently doing that already, but on a small scale. We could go a lot bigger with that and scale that up in various parts of the country. But also even waste from like farmlands. So when we start having like large agricultural farmlands, we could then start aggregating the waste from animals, from plants, etc. when you cultivate, etc. and using that to generate electricity. So there's a lot that hasn't been explored, and there's a lot of growth there. But something I definitely see that would enhance electricity distribution in Nigeria is breaking it down into smaller groups. We're not going to get anywhere if we keep looking at it from a bigger lens where everything has to come from national level, federal level, then state level. Then I think we actually have a lot to grow local level, where local communities or smaller communities are broken up and they have their own infrastructure. They have their own microgrid is what is the official term for it. That's a quicker way for us to arrive at our goal. So rather than having the entire Cross River state connected at the same time, it's kind of like any problem. You want to break it down into smaller sizes and address it that way. So I definitely see that microgrids as one way of enhancing Nigeria's energy future. In terms of extending my activities to Nigeria, so mine is just from a place of passion, you know, and that's my country. That's why to parts of Africa is what you asked. So at the moment, most of the stuff I do in Nigeria is more around volunteering. I don't personally have that many resources. Like I don't have the kind of finances to start up like a power project or something, but it's something I aspire to do. And so at the moment, the way I support or the way I extend my activities is by sharing my knowledge of things I know and things that I have experienced. But also, increasingly, I've been researching like areas for improvement. For example, in construction now in Nigeria, how is that process conducted? In the UK, there is time slots where the engineers, there's a design stage, so there's a concept stage, the design development stage, the technical design stage, and then handover. But from interactions from my time when I came for that project, I realized that things are not as structured in that way in Nigeria. Could I possibly, knowing what I know from my experience here and knowing what happens in other parts of the world in terms of construction, could we create design a model that would be adapted or suitable for Nigeria? And if that is developed, I'm sure that Nigerians have thought about it. Every idea I come up, I can guarantee a Nigerian has thought about it because we're that intelligent group of people. But what has happened and why has that person's own not taken off? Why has the idea not taken off so far? Who are the key stakeholders that are needed for that idea to actually gain traction? But I'm also interested in farming. So whenever I save a few amount of money, I put it towards a farm, which I have, well, me and my siblings have back home. And it doesn't employ that many people. It's about, I think, 3 people at the moment. But I think agriculture is going to be a key part of our acceleration from where we are. So I'm really keen. So at the moment, it's just having crops to grow and having livestock. But then I would like to explore more research of it. So, you know, the ideas about energy from waste. But these are all personal things that I'm trying. So I plan to, like, from the research I do on that, publish papers and journal articles that other people can then learn more about. So it's all personal ideas. It's nothing on a grand scheme where I'm going to arrive and then everybody will have power. No, but I still class it as my own individual contribution to the bigger picture. In terms of other African countries, the only other African country I've worked in is Malawi. And we went there in May last year. We fundraised, me and a team of 24 other women engineers, and we raised about £30,000 through our networks here in the UK, and we were able to help them with building a new science, technology, engineering, and mathematics facility in Malawi. So that was really inspiring for me and very encouraging, because it's something I've always dreamed of doing when I worked with Engineers Without Borders. So Engineers Without Borders is another organization to check out. So it's engineers coming up with solutions to problems affecting developing countries. And sometimes they may not be fancy, high-tech stuff, but it does the job and it addresses the problem, whether it's around sanitation or whether it's around waste or whether it's around infrastructure. So I was really privileged to be part of that project and to be involved in that project. So we installed solar panels on the roof, and we were able to fundraise for the fit out, so the desks, the chairs, but also equipment, microscopes, wiring, Arduinos, etc., which were donated to the school. So on a personal level, those are the sort of ways I've extended my personal activities. At the moment, I can only do that with what I can do, because I still have my own job and my own needs as well to take care of. And if I'm not okay, I cannot be present for other people, basically. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's my answer to your question.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So we are now 10 minutes over, but I'd like to ask if there's one final question from anybody on the line, and then we will wrap up. Any other questions or comments from anybody? Don't be shy. And we're also happy to see some guys on the line. So we have Babatunde Raji, Onyechi, and others. So any other comments or questions? Okay. In that case, I want to thank Ozak again for your time. This has been a very inspiring and informative session. We will be sharing the recording with other students who weren't able to participate. And we're so grateful to have you as a mentor within our network. And just rest assured that, you know, this continues to positively impact the lives of everybody who comes across, you know, these types of talks. And we're really excited that you are so open and transparent and real in sharing your own story. So thank you again for that. And please continue being the amazing woman in STEM and STEM girl that you are. And STEM girls rock.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your time and for inviting me on today. It's been great. I've had a good time, and yeah, thank you very much.
Excellent. So there she is. Thank you, everybody, and have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Yeah, she's the one.
You see?
Mrs. Lara, the one that was in that they videoed her.
I know. That means they have sent it
to her. I don't even know. I just shocked my head.
You said my name.
I heard it. Wait.
I am.
Mommy, you don't know. It's a shock.
I am okay. What have you learned?
It's shock.
Okay, so bye everyone. We'll be having another section next week Friday.
Okay.
Yeah, so see you all till then. Bye.
Bye.